Today on The Big Story, former General Manager of AMKTC Town Council jailed for accepting bribes. Things get more desperate for protesters still trapped inside besieged university. A new hope for the high-speed rail project between Singapore and KL. Workplace sabotage, unhappy workers turning to tech to get back at bosses. Hello and welcome to The Big Story, where we'll discuss the top news of today and explain why it matters. I'm Dylan Ang, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. We begin with the jail sentencing of a former AMKTC Town Council General Manager and a company director for bribery. Here's Renee Poh with the report.
Former AMKTC GM Wong Chi Ming was sentenced to 27 months jail for receiving more than $86,000 in bribes. The man who bribed him, Chia Sin Lan, was sentenced to 21 months in jail. In exchange for his bribe money, Wong would award town council contracts to two of Chia's companies, both of which were fined $75,000 each. District Judge John Ng said Wong's corrupt acts were particularly reprehensible because he knew the town council's code of conduct. Instead of giving a good example, he had acted hypocritically. Wong spent the bulk of his bribe money on KTV lounges, massage parlours and restaurants. He kept a mistress in China whom he met at a KTV lounge and gave her $27,800. Renee Poh reporting for The Big Story.
Moving overseas, the standoff continues for hardcore anti-government protesters still trapped inside the besieged Hong Kong Polytechnic University. Witnesses say there are fewer than 100 protesters left inside. More than 1,000 protesters have been arrested. Most surrendered themselves, driven to desperation after police surrounded the university since Sunday. For those who have escaped, Hong Kong's police has this message.
Let me tell you this, you can run, but you cannot run forever. Just like the day before, a man that was identified by us has been arrested. Criminals that have escaped will eventually be captured.
Those still inside are scared to come out because they are afraid that they will face long jail terms if they are charged with rioting. In desperation, some try to leave through the sewers, but it's no use and they have to turn back.
We have been trying to escape since yesterday morning, but then we couldn't find a way out.
While the police and protesters see who will blink first, meanwhile, it's the parents who are staring into despair.
As parents, we only have one wish. We hope that each and every one of them can safely return home with us.
With us from Hong Kong is regional correspondent Elizabeth Law. Hey Liz.
Hi Dylan. Hello.
Hey Liz. So what's the current situation like at PolyU?
Not great. I mean, we're on day 4 since the police have laid siege to the university. They started on Sunday, firing a lot of tear gas. Anytime anyone tries to come out of the university, they get a volley of tear gas, rubber bullets, and all of that as well. And as you said, people are afraid of coming out because they face a 10-year jail term if they are arrested for rioting. So earlier this morning, we actually saw other scenes where firemen have been sent, frogmen in fact, from the fire department have been sent to search the sewage systems to see if there are any more protesters who might be stuck or who are trying to escape through the system. But obviously it's been quite difficult for them and it's been impossible. Now outside of the university, there are works underway. Some government workers have come to clean up the roads and to try and reopen the toll booth of the Cross Harbour Tunnel, which is one of 3 undersea tunnels in Hong Kong. And in fact, that is the busiest tunnel linking Kowloon to the main Hong Kong island. But they said that it may take days before it can reopen because of extensive damage that has been caused by protesters. And so it will take a while more.
Right. Now, Liz, US lawmakers have just passed a bill that could pave the way for diplomatic action and economic sanctions against Hong Kong. What's the reaction to this over there?
Well, obviously it has been quite a welcome development, especially for the pro-democracy people, because they feel that this is the US standing up for them and that there is international attention on the movement here, and they feel that it's great. But it all comes down to whether or not President Trump signs this into law. He has about 10 days to do that, and it remains to be seen whether or not he will use this as a bargaining chip in the trade war with China. Now, on the other hand, China has reacted furiously. We have the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, we have Beijing's liaison office here, and most recently, just about 2 hours ago, we've had the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs calling it, I'm just reading the quote here, disregards the facts, confuses right and wrong, violates the truth, and plays with double standards. It has also said that basically by doing this, the US is in fact glorifying and beautifying the violence that has been seen in Hong Kong recently.
Right. Now, Liz, on a final note, of course, the District Council election is scheduled to happen this Sunday. Do you think that it will go ahead as planned, and what will happen if it doesn't?
Well, so far all signs are pointing to the fact that it should go on. We've had warnings from the number 2 official, Matthew Cheung, and from Chief Executive Carrie Lam herself yesterday, saying that if violence continues, then they may postpone or cancel it. But of course, everyone is hoping that it goes forward. For now, I mean, as of this afternoon, we're still seeing advertisements and TV shows reminding people to go out and vote, flashing the candidates for each of the districts. So all signs are that it will go forward, and it really doesn't do anyone any good to try and cancel the election, because if they do cancel it, I think we can expect that there would be a lot more violence and chaos on the streets.
Right. Thank you, Liz, for the updates on the situation in Hong Kong, and as always, do stay safe there. To keep up to date with the latest developments in Hong Kong, stay tuned to the stories at straitstimes.com. Now, moving on to our second story, the postponed high-speed rail or HSR project between Malaysia and Singapore might resume after all, with a new development blueprint in the works. Sources revealed that the Malaysian government is planning a network of economic centres to tap on unrealised potential in the southwest of Peninsular Malaysia. The tentatively named New Economic Corridor could kick off as early as next year, as part of a long-term plan stretching beyond the next decade. The towns that could benefit from this corridor include Malacca, Muar, Batu Pahat, and other inland areas as well. We are joined now by Malaysia Bureau Chief Shannon Teo from Kuala Lumpur. Hey Shannon.
Hi.
Hey Shannon, why does this new economic corridor give us hope that the high-speed rail or HSR will be built?
So, nothing is set in stone yet. It's a very new plan. It's in its infancy. It was only presented to the Economic Affairs Minister on November 9. That's just a couple of weeks. Now, the idea is that it's based on connectivity and infrastructure. You want to connect these small towns that are going down the southwest coast of Malaysia from KL to JB, basically. So, what you want is to turn them into viable economic centers. Right now, if you're going to start a business in Malaysia, you end up in KL, in Penang, you ignore all these small towns. So that's why the HSR will play. Policymakers in Malaysia, people who are putting up this proposal to the government are saying, hey, you look at this route that we have for HSR, this plan that we had with Singapore, it's actually going to benefit a lot of these small towns that you get along that corridor. I mean, they're calling it economic.
Right, Shannon, let's backtrack a bit, and what brought along the new economic project in the first place?
So the new economic corridor, and we just call it NEC for short, it didn't just come out of the blue. I know the minister announced it during the Tanjung Piai by-elections, and maybe he was trying to get some votes, but it's been proposed, and it's not a new kind of thinking from the current government. When Pakatan Harapan came to power in 2018, they started talking about spreading development out into more rural areas, into lesser developed states. Now, it's done other things as well. It's given back oil royalty money to Kelantan, Terengganu, to Sarawak. It's talked about building airports in places like Kedah and Perak, which have very small airfields right now. So it appears at least very serious about getting other states outside of the Klang Valley, outside of Penang, developed, and getting the HSR done is one way to do it. Now, I just want to stress that it's still pending a couple of assessments. One's the technical assessments, which shouldn't be too big a problem because it's been done before. The previous government said engineering-wise it's sound.
Right.
The more important one is the commercial assessment, which will test whether it's viable economically. I mean, we are talking about 100 billion ringgit, which is 1/3 of the government's annual revenue.
Right, Shannon, tell us a bit more about the project itself. How will this bring economic growth to the area?
So let's go back to this idea about small towns, right? These are not small towns which are there for no reason. They've got good economic heritage. They are there because during colonial times or even further back, there was actual economic activity there. You take Kluang, for example. It is an inland port. There was a very important railway station there, and it serves a vast tract of agriculture where a lot of the goods were sent into Kluang and then shipped out elsewhere. Now, because it became an important rail station, you get engineering works popping up over there. And so this stuff has kind of declined in recent decades because you've got the North-South Highway bringing development and economic activity out towards the coast. You've got air travel now and air transport, air cargo, things like that. So there is viable economic activity. You look at Muar again, another example. It's still very famous for furniture. But how can it get to the next level? How can it really start exporting stuff? You need the logistics. So that's where the idea has come from. And our current government thinks HSR can be part of the jigsaw.
Right. Thank you, Shannon, for sharing more about this. Of course, if you'd like to read more, you can always visit our website at straitstimes.com. And now let's move on to What's Trending, where Kim will share with us what's buzzing in the internetverse. Over to you, Kim.
Thanks, Dylan. It's time for What's Trending. First up, news that may not spark joy. Decluttering queen Marie Kondo shot to fame by encouraging people to declutter and get rid of things that do not spark joy. Now you can replace the stuff you threw away with products from her new online shop. The internet was abuzz with mixed reviews, with one Twitter user saying, "So now Marie Kondo wants you to buy as much of her stuff as possible? Ironic." Oof. Kondo probably expected some flack when she said, "My tidying method isn't about getting rid of things, it's about heightening your sensitivity to what brings you joy." What do you think? Is this ironic? Join the debate in the comments. Next, in football news, Singapore's national team, the Lions, beat Yemen 2-1 in a World Cup qualifier match yesterday. Coach Tatsuma Yoshida said of the match, "This was one of the best performances, but not the best. We must always try to win wherever we play." The Lions will play their next qualifier away at Palestine on March 26 next year. Go Lions! And finally, giant panda Bebe left the Washington National Zoo for China on Tuesday. He is the third surviving cub to be born at the zoo and the last to leave. The panda boarded a 16-hour direct flight to Chengdu, China, stocked with his favorite snacks such as bamboo shoots, pears, and cooked sweet potatoes. Aww. His return to his parents' homeland is part of a research and breeding program, which are critical for efforts to reintroduce pandas into the wild. Let's hope that goes well. That's all for What's Trending today. If you've seen a story that you'd like to share, link it in the comments section below. Back to you, Dylan.
Thanks, Kim. The age-old practice of workplace sabotage remains alive and well in Singapore, and unhappy workers, in fact, have become ever more creative in getting back at their companies with help from technology. Deleting files containing months of hard work from a server and spitting into the food at a food processing facility, these are just some of the ways that disgruntled employees have sabotaged their employers in the last year. The most common causes of workplace sabotage: anger regarding wages, perceptions of favoritism, a lack of training, or the way staff have been treated. While industry players have noted that the number of workplace sabotage have remained constant over the years, it is technology that has made sabotage more subtle and harder to detect. With us in the studio now is journalist Cheryl Tate to tell us more. Hey Cheryl.
Hi Dylan.
Now Cheryl, welcome to the show. Briefly tell us, how has tech changed the power dynamics between employer and employee?
So I think that the main point here is that tech has shifted the power balance in favor of the employee. Number one, there are more employees working for a company than there are supervisors. So if one supervisor were to take charge of keeping an eye on every employee on an entire tech system, that would be virtually impossible. So in this case, this opened us up sort of many pathways for employees to, if they are so disgruntled as to do so, to manipulate information in the system, to delete shared files, and even their co-workers' hard work.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Cheryl, going on of what you're saying, give us some examples of how people actually go about, sabotaging their workplaces using technology.
Yes. So I interviewed representatives from 5 different companies, and one really stood out in my mind because an employee who had mild to severe mental disease had actually gone into the system after hours, managed to access the system and delete shared files that contained work over 6 months, right before the night of a major pitch. So I think this is rather alarming that this could happen. It is demonstrative of the fact that there are very few security safeguards in place that are barriers to these people actually being able to do so.
Right.
I think there was also this instance where there were employees who managed to steal information from a private server where only their bosses had access to it. So this resulted in a competitor actually having the same files, which is very disturbing if you think about it. Yes.
Yeah, so what you're saying, this brings about challenges when it comes to policing workplace sabotage. So what can be done to kind of prevent this, or at least mitigate this from happening?
Well, I'm no expert in workplace sabotage, but from what I've found, new safeguards are very useful in actually deterring employees from doing so. I think number one is deterrence. Number two is being able to actually prevent these things from happening. So systems need to be safeguarded from within, and this requires the help of computer experts, people who know more than the average person in the office, who can guard against these things happening. And obviously, this doesn't exclude manual labor. For example, workers on a line in a food processing company. I interviewed one representative from a food processing company who said that there were workers who spit into the food, which is really gross, and we should safeguard against that as well. Yes.
So are you suggesting, like, for example, installing or putting more passwords needed? So like, for example, the case that you gave about deleting shared files.
Yes.
Would that be a possible solution?
I think that might be one possible solution, but it's also encrypting certain amounts of information and really restricting that access, meaning that you need two-factor authorization to get through your supervisor's account. So I think that could help. Unless the supervisor is the one who is creating the problem, in which case I can't help them.
Well, thank you, Cheryl, for coming on the show and sharing more about this. Now, those were the top stories for the day. For more news and videos, do head on down to our website at straitstimes.com. I'm Dylan Ang. See you tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.